When 3 human colonies were obliterated in a single strike, the arrogant empire believed it had taught a lesson to a primitive species. But they didn't know they had awakened something that was never meant to rise. Hidden fleets, lunar fortresses, and mythical dragons turned out to be no legend, but a meticulously crafted defense. The war meant to punish became a disaster for those who thought themselves untouchable. Now, the galaxy faces a choice: live in fear or fly alongside the dragons. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Supreme Commander Varric stood still, 6 eyes fixed on the smoking ruins displayed in the projection dome. The remains of 3 human colonies in the Orion Spur were still smoldering: New Eden, Harmony, and Proxima Centauri 4. Once teeming with life, now nothing but ash and echoes. Just hours ago, they'd been bustling cities, shining beacons of human expansion. Now dust. The attack had gone flawlessly, orchestrated with cold Darien precision. The message had been delivered. Magnificent, isn't it? Admiral Jorix purred beside him, mandibles twitching with delight. 3 systems struck in unison. Dozens of cities turned to vapor. The humans will surely understand their place in the galaxy now. Varric didn't answer right away. His eyes blinked in slow sequence, a gesture of contemplation. Something gnawed at him, a sliver of doubt that no amount of statistics could silence. The humans had always been unsettling. They've been quiet, Varric finally said. Too quiet. Jorix chuckled, a dry, scraping sound that made Varric's auditory membranes recoil. They're barely a Type 1 civilization. 17 ships that can even break light speed, and not one of them could match our smallest destroyer. This isn't war. This is pest control. From behind them, the tactical officer, Zelnick, approached, datapad in hand. Young, eager, his carapace still bore the iridescent sheen of adolescence. Casualty reports, Supreme Commander. 42,000 on New Eden, 37.5 on Harmony, 29,200 on Proxima. Jorix clicked his approval. Excellent. That should cage them in their little corner for the next 100 years. But Varric didn't share his enthusiasm. 30 years ago, the cold Darien Imperium had cataloged humanity as a fledgling species, chaotic, reckless, barely out of their cradle. And yet, in those 30 years, they'd advanced at a pace that outstripped logic. They mastered fission in half the time it took most species. Their computing capacity doubled every 18 months. And they carried this maddening optimism, as though the galaxy wasn't trying to devour them whole. What of their homeworld? Varric asked. Earth? Zelnick frowned. No official transmissions. Civilian channels are full of panic. Their leaders are in emergency session. But nothing from their military. No fleet mobilizations. No changes in planetary defenses. No silo activations. See, Jorix waved a limb dismissively. They know they're beaten. But Varric's unease only deepened. The chamber fell silent as a comms technician called out. Incoming transmission. Origin, Earth. Put it through, Varric ordered. The display shifted. A human woman appeared, midlife by their standards. Short gray hair, eyes as black as vacuum. She wore no rank, no insignia, just a black uniform. Unmarked. I am Alexandra Drake, she said calmly, director of the Terran Defense Initiative. Varric stepped forward. I am Supreme Commander Varric of the Cold Darien Imperium. Your colonies were destroyed as punishment for illegal expansion into Imperium-claimed territories. Drake tilted her head. Were those same territories not abandoned for the past 12,000 years? They remain under Imperium protection, Varric replied stiffly, regardless of current occupancy. Drake smiled. Not kindly, not nervously, like a predator with no fear of consequences. Then let me share something your intelligence services seem to have missed. Jorix scoffed. Oh, and what would that be? We have a saying on Earth, Drake said softly. Let sleeping dragons lie. She stared directly into the camera. You just killed 108,730 civilians, including over 27,000 children. Varric felt a chill crawl up his spine. You just woke the dragons. The feed cut. What in the seven hells is a dragon? Jorix asked, visibly shaken. A mythological creature, Zelnick answered. Flying, fire-breathing, associated with power and destruction. In many human cultures, they represent ancient, unstoppable forces. Bedtime stories, Jorix muttered. They're trying to frighten us with folklore. Varric wasn't so sure. Triple our long-range scans. I want to know the moment a single human vessel moves. Supreme Commander, another voice interrupted. Unusual activity in Earth orbit. Multiple satellites going dark. Show me. The display shifted to Earth's orbit. At first, everything appeared normal, habitats, relay platforms, stations. Then, a satellite winked out. Then another. Then dozens. They're shutting down their network, Zelnick said. Everything. Even their radio transmissions. They're blinding themselves? Jorix whispered. No, Varric said quietly. They're blinding us. Silence fell over the command chamber. Earth, from orbit, was going dark, sector by sector, like a planet-sized creature closing its eyes. Massive energy spike from Earth's moon. Came another call. The moon? Varric asked. It's just research outposts and mining facilities. But the feed zoomed in, and the lie unraveled. The far side of the moon came alive. Hangar doors the size of cities opened from what had appeared to be natural craters. And out came ships. Not the industrial, clunky vessels humans had used for planetary missions. These were sleek, predatory, deadly. Dozens. Then hundreds. Impossible, Jorix muttered. No, Varric said, voice hollow. Our intelligence said they had 17 known ships. Supreme Commander, another officer cried out. Launches from Mars, Venus, asteroid belt, multiple points of origin. They're everywhere. Varric didn't hesitate. Send an emergency transmission to High Command. Human military capability grossly underestimated. Request immediate reinforcements. No acknowledgement, came the reply. They're jamming us. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Massive energy spike from Earth's inner satellite. The moon was moving. No longer orbiting Earth. Accelerating. Varric could hardly breathe. That's not a natural satellite. Beneath its cracking surface, metal gleamed. Not a hollow moon. A shell. And from it, the heart of something far more terrifying began to emerge. All ships, battle stations, Varric ordered. Prepare for immediate. Before he could finish, the entire chamber shook violently. Multiple vessels dropping from FTL directly ahead. Zelnick shouted. Unknown configuration. Energy signatures, off the charts. Varric turned to the display and saw them. They dwarfed cold Darien cruisers. Black hulls that seemed to drink light. Shaped like serpents. Like monsters. Like dragons. A transmission pinged. Drake appeared once more on the bridge of the largest vessel, shaped like a beast with molten fire coiling beneath its hull. I believe I was telling you about dragons, she said. What is this? Varric demanded, though he already feared the answer. These vessels were never in any of our intelligence reports. Of course not, Director Drake replied, her tone almost casual. That same predatory smile played on her lips. The Terran Defense Initiative operates on a need-to-know basis. And until today, you didn't need to know. Jorix surged forward, his mandibles twitching. You claim to be peaceful explorers. Your broadcasts, your diplomatic outreach, all spoke of cooperation and science. We are explorers, Drake said, her voice calm. We are builders, diplomats, learners. But we are not fools. Her eyes narrowed. When we reached for the stars, we did so knowing that not everything out there would wish us peace. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We evolved teeth. And now, we bite back. Zelnick spoke from the console, his voice trembling. Supreme Commander, they've locked weapons on all our vessels. All of them. Simultaneously. Drake didn't blink. You killed over 100,000 of our people today, Supreme Commander. Civilians. Teachers. Children. The energy ports along the dragon ships began to glow, pulsing with molten intensity. Here's what's going to happen, Drake said. You're going to order your fleet to stand down. You're going to surrender yourself and all officers responsible for today's attacks. And you're going to return to your High Council with a message. What message? Varric asked, though he already knew. Drake leaned forward, her voice steel. Humanity comes in peace. But the dragons come for those who harm what we protect. Choose wisely which one you want to meet. The transmission ended. The chamber was frozen. Even Jorix was speechless. Varric turned slowly to Zelnick. Open a channel. To Director Drake? Yes. Tell her, we're ready to negotiate terms of surrender. Silence gave way to urgent movement. Communications were re-established. Orders transmitted. Every cold Darien vessel in orbit of Earth began to stand down. The armistice was accepted. No further shots were fired. 3 days later, Varric walked through the interior of the TDF Leviathan, escorted by a human officer named Reeves. The ship was like nothing Varric had ever seen. Its corridors were smooth and dark, marked by subtle motifs of wings and scales. Despite its militaristic design, the vessel radiated a sense of purpose. Not terror, just preparedness. Your ship is remarkable, Varric said, breaking the silence. These alloys. I've never seen them before. Reeves said nothing. How long have you had these vessels? Varric pressed. After a pause, the human replied. The Leviathan was commissioned 27 years ago. One of our older models. 27 years. That meant humans had started building this fleet mere moments after first contact with the galaxy. While presenting themselves as eager newcomers, they had been preparing in secret. They entered a chamber labeled Strategic Command. Varric expected a war room. Instead, he found a conference space, sleek and dark, dominated by a long obsidian table. Humans sat around it in the same unmarked black uniforms. At the head sat Alexandra Drake. Supreme Commander, she said without looking up. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Varric hesitated, then obeyed. Cold Darians rarely sat during diplomacy, it made them feel small. But here, there was no room for posturing. You wanted to know about the dragons, Drake said. You deserve answers before we send you back to your council. You're releasing me? Of course. She looked up now. You'll serve our message better as a witness than a prisoner. A tall human male slid a data pad across the table. These are the terms of the armistice: cessation of hostilities, recognition of human sovereignty, reparations for the dead, and open communications. And if the High Council refuses? Then, Drake said quietly, we will introduce ourselves in person. Admiral Patel, sitting to her right, spoke up. You're not dealing with just any species, Commander. You're dealing with humans. And humans are different. Varric couldn't help the skepticism in his voice. Everyone says that of themselves. Patel grinned. Let me tell you a story. She gestured to the hollow projector, which lit up to show Earth's solar system. It zoomed in on the asteroid belt. We call this the Dragon's Nest, Drake explained. Over 200 hidden shipyards, built inside hollowed-out asteroids. Gravity lens to hide them from even the most sensitive scans. Weapon factories, training grounds, entire cities, all built within 15 years of first contact. The image shifted, Earth's moon, now exposed. That facility, she said, we didn't build in the moon. We built it first, then constructed a lunar shell around it. Varric stared, stunned. That's impossible. The resources alone would bankrupt most civilizations, Drake agreed. But humans have certain quirks. We're pathologically competitive. We accept enormous risk. And when united by fear, we move fast. General Kaido, a gaunt older man, spoke next. You were wrong about us. Commander, you thought we were explorers who stumbled into the stars. We are explorers, Admiral Patel interjected. But our history taught us never to accept the place others assigned to us. The projector displayed multiple systems now, every one of them containing dragon ships in position. While we've been speaking, Drake said, our fleets have assumed positions in every cold Darien system. We don't want war, but we're ready for it. This is an act of war, Varric whispered. No, Drake corrected. It's a demonstration. In those terms, she pointed to the untouched data pad, are exceedingly generous. We don't want your territory. We don't even want your technology. Just peace and justice. And if we agree? Varric asked, voice thin. Then, she said, we build a future together. As equals. Varric's mind reeled. The scale, the preparation, the restraint. Then General Kaido added quietly, those dragon ships? They're only 30% of our true fleet strength. The rest remain hidden. Even from us. You're bluffing, Varric said. But he knew. Drake didn't deny it. She just smiled. Then a communications officer entered and whispered something in her ear. Her expression darkened. Your Admiral Jorix managed to transmit a message to the High Council before we locked down communications. He urged them to launch a full-scale assault. Varric's hearts dropped. No. Please, no. Too late, Drake said. We've detected full fleet mobilization. Over 600 vessels, including your dreadnoughts. The room went still. I should tell you, Drake continued. We anticipated this. The moment your attack occurred, we activated Protocol Omega. Varric's mandibles twitched. What is Protocol Omega? Patel answered. Total war footing. Every dragon ship online. Every weapon armed. And the Ascalon Protocol. The name was unfamiliar, but the tension in the room made its meaning clear. Varric looked from one face to the next. What can I do? He asked softly. How do I stop this? You truly didn't know, did you? Drake asked, studying him. You believed the attack on our colonies was a warning, not war. I did, Varric said. The High Council told me it was a demonstration to discourage further human expansion. They lied to you, General Kaido said. Our intelligence suggests your leadership planned this conflict years ago. The colony strikes were only the opening gambit. Then give me a line to the council, Varric said, rising to his feet. Let me speak to them directly. I can still make them understand. Drake exchanged glances with her staff. Then she nodded. Do it. The communications officer began working at once, establishing a quantum entanglement uplink, one that bypassed lightspeed delay. Within moments, the 9-member Cold Darien High Council appeared in the holographic chamber. They looked displeased. Supreme Commander, began High Councilor Dressy, his voice cold. We received Admiral Jorix's report. Your capitulation is unacceptable. Your failure, even more so. Counselors, Varric began, steadying his voice, I urge you, do not proceed with the attack. The humans possess military capabilities far beyond our estimates. If we escalate, we will be annihilated. Your cowardice is noted, another counselor snapped. Perhaps captivity has warped your loyalty. I am not a captive. I am trying to save millions of lives. You mean to surrender to primitives who barely mastered orbital mechanics? Dressy sneered. Their colonies are undefended. Their technology is inferior. Their very existence is an insult to our destiny. You are wrong, Varric said. Everything we thought about humans was wrong. They have thousands of ships. They built them in secret. They could destroy our fleet in hours. More cowardice, Dressy dismissed. Or perhaps you've been compromised. The humans offered peace. They are not conquerors. They're trying to avoid total war. We will proceed, Dressy said flatly. And when this infestation is cleansed, you will stand trial for treason. The transmission ended. Varric stood in silence. They won't listen, he said, turning to Drake. She looked almost sympathetic. We didn't think they would. She turned to Patel. Admiral, you have tactical command. Initiate Ascalon Protocol. Yes, Director. Patel rose. Dragon wings 1 through 7. Deploy to primary targets. 8 through 12. Defensive perimeter around all human systems. Launch every asset. Hold nothing back. Varric's limbs felt heavy. What happens now, he asked. Drake's expression darkened. Now, she said, we show your species why the dragon became the most feared creature in our mythology. The tactical display lit up again. The cold Darien fleet was advancing. Hundreds of warships, their dreadnoughts at the center like ancient gods of war. But they were still 6 hours from weapons range. We are giving them every opportunity to reconsider, Kaido said. Varric knew they would not. The next hours were agony. Repeated attempts at communication were ignored. The cold Darien formation held. The dragon ships moved with surgical precision, spreading in wings, clustering around strategic points. Then came the moment of contact. The cold Darians fired first. Energy lances streaked across the stars. Varric held his breath. The dragon ships didn't flinch. The beams struck hulls, rippling, but left no damage. What? He began. Metamaterial hulls, Admiral Patel explained. They convert directed energy into usable power. Your fleet is literally charging our systems. Then the dragons responded. Not with lasers. Not with torpedoes. With flame. From the mouths of their sculpted prows came roiling streams of plasma, superheated, writhing, and guided. Plasma targeting systems, Kaido said softly. Quantum-guided particles. They will not miss. Varric could only watch. Cold Darien ships were engulfed. Shields collapsed. Hulls boiled. Dozens of vessels were vaporized within minutes. They can still withdraw, Drake said. We're broadcasting surrender protocols on all channels. But the Imperium pressed on. Another wave. Another massacre. 2 hours in, half the fleet was gone. The remainder clustered around the dreadnoughts. Your council is aboard one of those, Drake observed. Varric nodded. Then perhaps, she continued, they will finally understand. She opened a wide-channel transmission. This is Director Alexandra Drake of the Terran Defense Initiative. Your fleet is decimated. Your strategy has failed. I offer you one last chance. Surrender and accept our original terms. No reply. Then a voice. High Counselor Dressy. We will never surrender, he snarled. We will not die alone. The tactical map flashed red. The 5 dreadnoughts were powering up. Gravitational disruptors, Patel reported. They're targeting Earth. Firing in 30 seconds. Drake's voice was flat. Ascalon Protocol. Final authorization. Execute, Patel confirmed. At first, nothing happened. Then the stars themselves seemed to bend. From what had appeared to be empty space, stations emerged. Massive, moon-sized constructs. Dragon's teeth, Kaido said. Automated defense platforms. Quantum-locked. Hidden in dimensional fold space. In position for over a decade. They rotated in perfect sync. 7 stations fired. Not plasma. Not lasers. Gravitational beams. Each one focused on a dreadnought. The mighty warships folded in on themselves like paper, crumpling into singularities, reduced to super-dense fragments no larger than stones. Nothing remained. The High Council. The fleet. The threat. Gone. Not a word was spoken. No cheer. No celebration. Only silence. It's over, Drake said. Stand down, Ascalon. Begin recovery operations. Prioritize survivors. She turned to Varric, who sat frozen. I'm sorry it came to this, Commander. We wanted peace. Varric nodded slowly. So did I? But the Council, they were blind. They believed in conquest. They couldn't imagine equals, let alone superiors. Not superiors, Drake said softly. Just different. Kaido stepped forward. You'll be returned home. What happens next is up to you and whatever remains of your government. But understand, we don't seek vengeance. Or territory. Or domination. We only want to ensure this never happens again. Varric looked at the humans around him. They were not what he'd been taught to expect. Not conquerors. Not primitives. Something else. A species that built dragons, not to destroy, but to protect. 1 month later, Varric stood once again under the vaulted ceilings of the cold Darien Council chamber. But now, only 5 members remained where once there had been 9. The Imperium was no more. What sat before him was a provisional body, fractured, uncertain, but alive. They had survived, at least for now. Supreme Commander, Counselor Melvick began, his tone cautious. You have returned from Earth. You were tasked with negotiating the final treaty. What are their demands? Varric placed a data pad on the central plinth. Recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Mutual non-aggression. Open trade routes. Cultural exchange initiatives. A joint defense alliance against future galactic threats. Silence. Melvick blinked slowly. That's all. Varric nodded. No territorial concessions. No demands for technology. Reparations, yes, but only those already agreed upon. Another counselor leaned forward, puzzled. They do not seek vengeance? No, Varric said. They believe the greatest reparation we can offer is to help build something better. Still, the chamber was quiet. They are strange, Varric admitted, but not cruel. Capable of terrifying force, yet measured in its use. Another counselor finally asked, what do they want in return? Varric looked out the viewport behind them, at the stars stretching across the void. They've invited a delegation to Earth. To see their world. Meet their people. Understand them. Understand what? Someone asked. Varric thought of Drake, of Kaido, of the Leviathan's halls filled with solemn warriors and quiet efficiency. He remembered the phrase she had repeated like a sacred warning. To understand that dragons are not merely creatures of destruction, Varric said. In their culture, they are guardians. Protectors. Symbols of what is loved and fiercely defended. He paused. We awakened their dragons. But if we're wise, we might learn to fly beside them instead of burning beneath them. The chamber lapsed into deliberation. Varric, for his part, turned away from the table, his gaze fixed on the stars. Out there, the dragon ships continued their vigil. Not in conquest. Not in retribution. But in quiet readiness, waiting to see what path the cold Darien people would now choose. And for the first time since this war began, Varric felt something unfamiliar. Hope. The diplomatic vessel that carried the cold Darien delegation entered Terran space under heavy escort, but there was no sense of hostility. The dragon-winged ships that flanked them were silent, vigilant, but distant, not as enforcers, but as watchers. The stars seemed calmer somehow, as if the worst was behind them. Varric, seated beside the other diplomats, found himself scanning every Terran ship they passed, not for weapons, but for design, purpose, intention. And what he saw unnerved him in a way no armament ever could. They weren't warships anymore. They were symbols. Each dragon vessel bore not only the sleek, black hulls and glowing energy ports, but also newly painted emblems, names, family crests, inscriptions in languages he couldn't read but somehow understood. They were tributes. Memorials. Monuments flying through the void. When they arrived in orbit over Earth, Varric was struck by the beauty of the planet. It wasn't the lushness of its oceans or the brilliance of its cities, it was the scars. Vast plains reclaimed from war. Coastal defenses now converted into research labs. The remnants of old conflicts not hidden, but transformed. Their landing was met with formality, but not coldness. Alexandra Drake herself greeted them at the platform, flanked by officers, yes, but also by civilians, scientists, engineers, even children. Welcome to Earth, she said. We're honored to receive you. We are honored to come, Varric replied with a formal tilt of his head. Drake led them to a series of surface facilities, centers of learning, innovation, cooperation. The humans made no effort to flaunt their power. Instead, they showcased their progress. Solar forges extracting energy from focused sunlight. Terraforming platforms modifying inhospitable terrain. Hospitals where humans treated not just their own wounded, but alien refugees from worlds the cold Darien Imperium had once conquered. You're rebuilding, Varric said. We never stopped, Drake answered. The galaxy doesn't pause for war. It moves forward. So must we. Later that day, they were brought to an open-air auditorium near the equator, where a gathering of Terran citizens and allies had assembled to witness what the media called the Accord of Understanding. It wasn't a treaty in the formal sense. It was a gesture, a declaration of future intent. Director Drake took the podium first. Her voice, amplified across the lush fields and open sky, was steady and resolute. When we first reached for the stars, we hoped to find friends. What we found were threats. So we built shields. We built dragons. Not to dominate, but to defend. She turned to the delegation. But now, for the first time, we see a former enemy come not with weapons, but with open hands. And we remember what we were before all this began. Explorers. Dreamers. Builders. Then she stepped aside and gestured to Varric. He approached slowly. He had spoken before billions, had negotiated peace on distant worlds. But never had he felt a speech weigh so heavily on his soul. I speak for a people who made a mistake, he began. We judged humanity by their humility and mistook it for weakness. We saw their open hands and assumed they had no claws. He looked at the crowd, so many different faces, so many colors, species, expressions. We were wrong. He paused. In our arrogance, we awakened their dragons. And they came in not as myths, not as monsters, but as defenders. What followed was not a conquest, but a lesson. One we are here to learn. He bowed. To those we harmed, we offer our apology. To those we feared, we now offer our respect. And to the galaxy, we offer our commitment to fly alongside dragons, not in defiance, but in harmony. The silence that followed was not empty. It was reverent. The kind that marked the end of one age and the cautious beginning of another. In the weeks following the Accord of Understanding, cold Darien society entered a period of reckoning not seen in centuries. Across 17 systems, monuments to conquest were dismantled. Military academies that had once glorified aggression were restructured into institutions for diplomacy, xenology, and peacekeeping. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't easy, but it had begun. Varric became something unexpected, a symbol. The commander who had led the attack that nearly triggered a war of extinction had become the architect of reconciliation. It was a strange burden, one that drew both admiration and suspicion. Not all cold Darians were ready to forgive humanity or themselves. On Earth, Varric met again with Director Drake in a quiet chamber aboard the Leviathan. This time, they sat as equals. The holographic table between them displayed joint plans for reconstruction in neutral systems, joint research stations, relief zones, and patrol routes for humanitarian support. You've been busy, Drake noted. I had to be, Varric replied. If we don't move quickly, the vacuum left by the High Council could collapse everything. She nodded. And if it does, others will try to fill it. Not all of them with good intentions. They studied each other for a moment. You still don't trust us completely, Drake said. I trust you more than I trust my own people, Varric admitted. Her eyebrow rose. That, she said, is progress. Later, during a joint session on Lunar Prime, within the hollowed infrastructure once hidden beneath the false lunar surface, delegates from over 40 species gathered to witness a proposed resolution. The creation of the Galactic Compact for Defensive Cooperation. A charter to formalize alliances not through hegemony or empire, but through mutual protection and understanding. Admiral Patel delivered the opening address. For too long, she said, the galaxy has been ruled by fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of one another. But humanity didn't survive its own world by giving in to fear. We survived because we adapted. We endured. And then we prepared. Not to conquer, but to ensure we would never kneel again. Varric followed her. I once served an empire that believed it was invincible, he said. We learned, too late, that strength alone is not security. That dominance invites resistance. And that humility can open doors arrogance would forever keep locked. He looked across the gathered species. Let this be the door we open together. And with that, the vote was cast. The charter passed, unanimously. But not all saw it as a triumph. On a fringe world near the edge of cold Darien territory, a splinter group made itself known. Survivors of the old regime, militarists, traditionalists, those who believed Varric's surrender was the greatest betrayal in their species' history. They called themselves the Ember Path. They hijacked an old battlecruiser, retrofitted it with stolen tech, and disappeared into deep space. What they sought, no one could say. But their last transmission was chilling. We remember the fire, and we will ignite it again. Drake received the report aboard Dragonhold Alpha. She didn't react with panic. She simply sighed. They always come back. Varric, present beside her, shook his head. I'll handle it. They're your people, she said. No, he corrected. They were. He turned, already issuing orders. He would not allow the Ember to become an inferno. Not again. Tracking the Ember Path was not simple. They moved with the cunning of cornered beasts, using ancient cold Darien smuggler routes, masking their signals, and exploiting forgotten military caches from wars long past. But they were not undetectable. Not to the dragons. Varric worked in tandem with Terran intelligence, his every move shadowed by specialists from the initiative's covert branches. He stood aboard the TDF Horizon, not a warship but a long-range intelligence corvette, fast and silent. It felt alien to him, despite the weeks he had spent alongside human officers. Their methods were precise, but not rigid. Tactical, but intuitive. Human warfare, he realized, was as much psychological as it was technological. They've entered the Myros Rift, one of the Terran analysts reported. There's an abandoned mining station in Sector 9. Could be a rally point. Varric nodded. Set intercept course. Full cloak. Notify the Leviathan. When they arrived, the Ember Path ship was there, surrounded by smaller retrofitted support craft, scavenged from the cold Darien frontier. Their formation was amateurish. Impatient. But their flagship pulsed with a feral energy. They had armed it with unstable fusion cores, enough to vaporize a planet. This is Varric of the Cold Darien Provisional Council, he transmitted. Stand down. You are surrounded. The response came not from a comms officer, but from the former Admiral Trelzik, a relic of the old guard. You, he growled. You brought this disgrace to our kind. You bowed to the humans. But we remember who we are. You forgot the fire. We didn't. Trelzik, Varric said. I remember what you were, a tactician. A leader. A servant of the people. But this path, this is madness. You think they'll let us live? Trelzik roared. They lull you with peace until you're weak enough to be broken. They wear the skin of dragons, Varric, but make no mistake, they are predators. No, Varric said. They are guardians. And they are watching. Right now. The space around the Ember fleet shimmered, and from dimensional folds emerged 5 Dragon-class interceptors. Silent. Motionless. But unmistakably deadly. You have one chance, Varric said. Power down your weapons. Surrender. You will not be harmed. But Trelzik had already chosen his death. The Ember ship surged forward, its fusion cores spiking. Suicide course. No, Varric whispered. Before the order could be given, one of the Dragon ships pulsed. A gravity anchor engaged, not to destroy, but to halt. Space warped around the Ember cruiser, freezing it mid-charge. Its momentum dissolved. Its weapons failed. The ship drifted, powerless. Varric exhaled. The Ember Path had been broken. Back aboard the Leviathan, Varric stood before Director Drake once more. It's done, he said. No casualties. Their command structure collapsed the moment Trelzik fell. The others surrendered. And him? Drake asked. Alive. In stasis. He'll face judgment back home. You did well. Varric looked tired. I only did what needed to be done. Drake nodded. That's what leadership is. There was a pause. You've changed, she observed. So have we all, he replied. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching stars pass beyond the observation deck. Then Drake said quietly, would you consider staying? Varric turned. On Earth. With us. The compact needs leaders who've stood on both sides of the line. You understand what's at stake. He didn't answer right away. His people still needed him. But Earth had become more than a battlefield. It had become a possibility. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I ask. Months passed. The Galactic Compact grew from promise to presence. Where once cold Darien fleets patrolled with dominance, now joint squadrons of Terran and Kularian vessels conducted peacekeeping operations, aiding in disaster recovery, border arbitration, and diplomatic mediation. The dragons no longer flew as symbols of fear, but of deterrence, quiet, deliberate reminders that peace had teeth, and it would not stand idly by. Varric returned to his homeworld only once, to officially resign his military commission and formally endorse the compact on behalf of the reformed Provisional Assembly. The ceremony was brief, sober, and without spectacle. His people, humbled by defeat and shaken by survival, now measured their leaders by foresight rather than fury. He left again before the sun had fully risen, departing in a Terran diplomatic craft. When the hatch sealed behind him, he did not look back. He took up residence in a Terran orbital habitat, an ambassador without portfolio, a strategist without a flag. He advised, mediated, translated cultures that had no common language but mutual trauma. And slowly, carefully, something new began to take root. Not a peace maintained by fear, but a peace maintained by trust. One evening, as he walked through the Leviathan's observation garden, a lush, self-contained biome hovering above Earth's orbit, he found Drake already there, watching the blue curve of the world below. They're calling it the Second Dawn, she said without turning. Our analysts think the compact will become permanent. Not just a truce, but a framework. Varric joined her in silence. I've been thinking, he said finally, about dragons. She arched an eyebrow. I used to see them only as weapons, he continued. Monsters hiding beneath elegance. But I was wrong. Drake smiled faintly. Their stories given form. We created them to terrify those who would harm us, but also to inspire us. To remind ourselves that even the weak can become mighty if they protect something worth fighting for. Varric nodded. I believe that now. The comm chime interrupted them. A junior officer approached, nervous, breathless. Director, Commander, there's a situation. Where? Outer colonies, he replied. Not human. A small trade world, neutral. Under siege by pirates. No fleet nearby. They're requesting compact assistance. Drake and Varric exchanged a look. Send word, she said calmly. Dispatch a dragon wing. Fast and surgical. Yes, Director. As the officer hurried away, Drake turned to Varric. Care to come along? He hesitated, then smiled. I wouldn't miss it. Aboard the TDF Vesper, the newest Dragon-class cruiser, Varric stood once more on a command deck. But this time, it wasn't what he saw in the crew's eyes. It was unity, resolve, purpose. As the ship slid into FTL, the stars stretched, and with them, the future. A future not built on dominance, but on vigilance, on balance, on dragons not asleep, but watching, protecting. We are the ones who woke them, but we are also the ones who chose to walk with them. The galaxy had changed, and perhaps so had we all.